What happens when two of music's biggest powerhouses clash live on television over a decades-old controversy that was never supposed to see the light of day? Well, you're about to find out, because what unfolded on the Kelly Clarkson show left both the audience and crew absolutely speechless. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story has more twists than you could ever imagine. Kelly Clarkson leaned back in her chair, that familiar warm smile spreading across her face as she looked across at her guest. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement, phones already recording as they prepared for what they thought would be another feel-good interview, filled with laughs and nostalgic moments. "Shania, I have to tell you, having you here is honestly like a dream come true for me," Kelly began, her voice carrying that genuine enthusiasm she was known for. "Your music shaped so much of my childhood, and I know it did the same for millions of people around the world." Shania nodded politely, but there was something in her posture that seemed slightly guarded. "Well, that's very kind of you to say, Kelly. I've always admired your voice, and your success on American Idol certainly paved the way for so many artists." "Oh, thank you so much," Kelly replied, clasping her hands together. "You know, I was actually thinking about this before you came on, and I realized we've never really had a proper conversation about the music industry and how it's changed since both of our careers started. I mean, you dominated the 90s, and then I came along in the early 2000s. Something flickered across Shania's face, just for a moment, but she maintained her composure. "Yes, the industry has definitely evolved quite a bit since then." Kelly leaned forward slightly, her interviewer instincts kicking in. "I remember when I was just starting out, there were all these rumors and stories floating around about established artists and how they felt about newcomers. Some of it was probably just tabloid nonsense, but you know how it is in this business." "I'm not sure I follow what you're getting at," Shania said, her tone becoming noticeably cooler. The audience began to sense a shift in the atmosphere, the cheerful chatter dying down as they focused more intently on the conversation unfolding before them. Kelly seemed to realize she might have touched on something sensitive, but instead of backing away, she pressed forward. "Well, I just mean that there were always stories about established artists feeling threatened by new talent, or feeling like the industry was changing too quickly for their liking. I'm sure you heard some of those same stories." Shania's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Kelly, I think maybe we should focus on the music rather than industry gossip that happened over 20 years ago." Of course," Kelly said quickly, but there was something in her expression that suggested she wasn't quite ready to drop the subject. "I just think it's interesting how perceptions can be so different from reality. Like, I remember reading an article where someone, I won't say who, but someone supposedly said that reality TV winners would never have real staying power in country music." The studio fell completely silent. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze as they realized they might be witnessing something unprecedented. Shania's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you referring to something specific, Kelly, or are we just making general observations about unnamed sources and old tabloid stories?" Kelly's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "I'm just saying that looking back now, it's funny how wrong some of those predictions turned out to be. I mean, here we are, both still making music, both still connecting with audiences." "Yes, here we are," Shania replied, but her voice had taken on an edge that even the most casual viewer couldn't miss. The tension in the room was becoming palpable. Kelly's usual easygoing interview style seemed to be hitting a wall that she hadn't anticipated, and instead of changing direction, she appeared to be doubling down. "I guess what I'm curious about," Kelly continued, "is whether you ever felt like the industry was trying to pit women against each other, especially during transition periods when new artists were coming up and established artists were, well, trying to maintain their relevance." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Shania sat back in her chair, studying Kelly's face with an intensity that made several audience members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Maintain their relevance," Shania repeated slowly, as if she were tasting each word. "That's an interesting way to phrase it, Kelly." Kelly seemed to realize she had crossed some kind of line, but instead of apologizing or changing course, she leaned into the moment. "I don't mean it in a negative way at all. I just think it's fascinating how the music industry works, how success is measured, how artists navigate changes in the landscape." "And you think I was concerned about maintaining my relevance when you won American Idol?" Shania said. It wasn't really a question. The audience was completely silent now, sensing they were witnessing something that would likely make headlines. Kelly's producers were probably frantically trying to figure out whether to cut to commercial or let this play out. "I never said that," Kelly replied, but her defensive tone suggested she knew exactly what territory she had wandered into. "No, you didn't say it directly," Shania acknowledged, "but you've been dancing around something since this interview started, and I think both of us know what that something is." Kelly took a deep breath, and for a moment it seemed like she might try to defuse the situation. Instead, she made a choice that would change the entire trajectory of the interview. "Look, Shania, I think we're both adults here, and we both know that there were some comments made back then that maybe weren't the most supportive of new artists coming into country music through unconventional paths. Shania's expression hardened completely. Comments that I supposedly made? I'm not accusing you of anything, Kelly said quickly. I'm just acknowledging that there were reports, and maybe this is a chance to clear the air about whatever happened. Back then, the studio felt like it was holding its collective breath. What had started as a friendly interview was rapidly transforming into something neither host nor guest had probably intended, but both seemed unwilling to back down from. Shania leaned forward in her chair, her eyes locked directly on Kelly's. You know what, Kelly, let's clear the air. You obviously have something you want to say to me, so why don't you just say it instead of hiding behind vague references to unnamed sources and old tabloid stories? Kelly's smile completely disappeared now, replaced by a look of determination that her regular viewers rarely saw. Fine. There was an interview you did with Country Weekly where you said that artists who came from reality television shows were taking shortcuts and that real country artists paid their dues the hard way. You specifically mentioned that winners from singing competitions would never understand the struggle that authentic country musicians went through. The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row leaned forward, their phones capturing every moment of what was quickly becoming television gold. Shania didn't flinch, and you think that was about you? I think the timing was pretty convenient, Kelly shot back, her voice rising slightly. This was right after I won American Idol. Right when I was trying to make the transition into country music. And suddenly there's Shania Twain telling the world that people like me don't deserve to be taken seriously. People like you, Shania repeated, her voice dripping with incredulity. Kelly, you won the biggest singing competition in America. You had instant fame, instant recognition, a record deal handed to you on a silver platter. How exactly is that the same struggle that artists who spent years playing honky-tonks and writing songs in Nashville went through? Kelly's cheeks flushed red. So you're saying I didn't earn my success? You're saying that because I won a competition, everything that came after was just given to me? I'm saying that your path was different, Shania replied coldly. And at the time, I thought it was important to acknowledge that difference. Country music has always been about authenticity, about real stories from real people who lived real struggles. And you think my struggles weren't real? Kelly said, her voice now carrying a tremor of anger. You think that growing up poor, in Texas, working multiple jobs to support my family, dealing with an absent father, none of that was real enough for your standards of authentic country music? Shania paused for a moment, and for just an instant, it seemed like she might soften her position. Instead, she doubled down. Your personal struggles were real, Kelly, but your path to success in the music industry was manufactured. There's a difference. The studio audience was completely transfixed. This was no longer an interview. It was a full-blown confrontation between two of the biggest names in music, and it was happening live on daytime television. Kelly stood up abruptly from her chair, startling everyone in the studio. Manufactured. That's what you really think of me in my career, isn't it? That everything I've accomplished, every song I've written, every performance I've given, it's all just manufactured success, because I happened to win a singing competition when I was 20 years old. Shania remained seated, but her posture was rigid. I think the industry changed, and not necessarily for the better. Reality television created a shortcut to fame that bypassed the traditional process of developing as an artist. That's not a personal attack on you, it's an observation about the industry. Oh, it's absolutely a personal attack, Kelly fired back, her voice echoing through the studio. You don't get to hide behind industry observations when you specifically called out reality show winners in that interview. You weren't talking about the industry in general, you were talking about me. If the shoe fits, Shania said quietly, but her words carried clearly through the studio's sound system. The audience gasped again, and several people could be heard murmuring in shock. Kelly's producers were visibly panicking in the background, unsure whether to intervene or let this historic confrontation play out. Kelly's hands were trembling now, whether from anger or adrenaline. It was impossible to tell. If the shoe fits, are you kidding me right now? Shania, I have been nothing but respectful to you and your legacy since I started in this business. I have praised your music. I have acknowledged your influence. I have never said a single negative word about you in any interview or public forum. And I appreciate that, Shania replied, though her tone suggested she didn't appreciate it much at all. Do you? Because right now it feels like you've been waiting for 20 years to tell me exactly what you think of my career and my place in country music. Is that what this is? Have you been sitting on this resentment all this time, just waiting for the right moment to let me know that you think I'm a fraud? Shania finally stood up as well, the two women now facing each other across the small interview space. I don't think you're a fraud, Kelly. I think you're talented. But I also think that talent and authenticity aren't the same thing. And the industry lost something important when it started prioritizing television personalities over genuine country artists. Television personalities, Kelly repeated, her voice now shaking with barely controlled fury. Is that what you think I am? A television personality who happened to stumble into a music career. I think you're a pop star who tried to rebrand herself as country when it was convenient, Shania said, her words cutting through the air like a blade. The studio fell into complete silence. Even the camera operators seemed to have stopped breathing. Kelly stared at Shania for what felt like an eternity, her face cycling through expressions of shock, hurt, and finally, cold anger. After everything I've accomplished in my career, after all the respect I've shown you and your legacy, you're going to sit here on my own show and tell me that I'm not a real country artist, Kelly said, her voice now barely above a whisper but somehow more powerful than when she had been shouting. Shania's expression didn't change. I'm telling you what I told Country Weekly 20 years ago. The industry changed, and not everyone was happy about how it changed. Well, congratulations, Shania, Kelly said, taking a step back from her chair. You've finally said what you really think. I hope it was worth it. The tension in the room was so thick it was almost suffocating. The audience was completely silent, afraid to even breathe too loudly for fear of missing what would happen next. This was television history in the making, and everyone knew it. Kelly took another step back, her eyes never leaving Shania's face. You know what the really sad part about this is? I invited you on my show because I genuinely respected you. I thought we could have a conversation about music, about being women in this industry, about how we've both navigated our careers over the years. And we are having that conversation, Shania replied, though there was a slight crack in her previously unwavering composure. Sometimes honest conversations aren't comfortable. Honest. Kelly let out a bitter laugh that echoed through the silent studio. You want to talk about honest? Let me be honest with you, Shania. That interview you did with Country Weekly, the one where you decided to take shots at reality show winners, do you know what that did to me? Do you have any idea? What it felt like to have someone I looked up to essentially tell the world that I didn't belong in country music. Shania's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond immediately. Kelly continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. I was 20 years old. 20 years old. Shania, I had just won this incredible opportunity. I was trying to figure out who I was as an artist, and then I wake up one morning to find that one of my childhood idols thinks I took a shortcut and doesn't deserve to be taken seriously. The industry is tough, Shania said quietly. Everyone faces criticism. Everyone faces criticism, Kelly repeated incredulously. That's your response. That's what you're going with. Shania, this wasn't just criticism, this was a coordinated effort to undermine my credibility before I even had a chance to prove myself. I was expressing my opinion about changes in the industry, Shania insisted, but her voice lacked the conviction it had carried just moments before. Your opinion about me, Kelly shot back. Stop hiding behind industry commentary. You were talking about me specifically, and you know it. And you want to know what's really ironic about this whole thing? You're talking about authenticity and paying dues. But let me ask you something. When you married your producer, and he helped craft your entire sound and image, was that paying your dues the hard way? The audience collectively inhaled sharply. Kelly had just crossed a line that everyone recognized, bringing up Shania's personal life and her relationship with Mutt Lange. Shania's face went completely white. How dare you? How dare I? What? Point out that your own success wasn't exactly the traditional Nashville route either. You married the man who produced your biggest hits, Shania. Your entire career transformation happened because of that relationship. So please, tell me more about manufactured success and shortcuts. My personal life has nothing to do with this conversation, Shania said, her voice now dangerously low, doesn't it? Kelly pressed on, seemingly unable to stop herself now that the floodgates had opened. You're going to lecture me about authenticity when your biggest albums were created in collaboration with the man you were sleeping with. At least I won my opportunity in front of millions of people. I didn't win it in someone's bedroom. The studio went dead silent. Several audience members covered their mouths in shock. Even the cameras seemed to stop moving as everyone realized they were witnessing something that would likely end careers or relationships. Shania's hands were shaking now. Whether from rage or humiliation, it was impossible to tell. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? Kelly's voice was steady now, cold and calculated. Mutt Lange turned you from a struggling country singer into an international superstar. He wrote your songs. He produced your albums. He created your image. And then when he left you for your best friend, your career mysteriously stalled. But sure, let's talk about authentic country music and paying dues. Shania took a step toward Kelly, her face flushed with anger. You know nothing about my marriage. You know nothing about my creative process. And you know nothing about what I went through. I know that you built your career on the back of a relationship, just like you're accusing me of building mine on the back of a television show, Kelly replied without missing a beat. The only difference is that my shortcut was public and yours was private. This interview is over, Shania said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Kelly crossed her arms. Is it because last I checked? This is my show, and you're still my guest. Not anymore, Shania replied. turning toward the side of the stage where her assistant was frantically trying to get the attention of the production crew. "Oh, so now you're just going to walk away?" Kelly called after her. "Just like you always do when someone challenges your narrative." Shania stopped in her tracks and turned back around. "What'd you just say?" "You heard me," Kelly said, her voice carrying clearly across the studio. "This is exactly what you did 20 years ago. Instead of supporting new artists, instead of lifting up other women in country music, you tore them down to protect your own position. And now that someone is finally calling you out on it, you're running away." "I am not running away from anything," Shania said, walking back toward the interview area. "I am choosing not to continue a conversation with someone who thinks it's appropriate to attack my personal life on national television, like you attacked mine in Country Weekly," Kelly shot back. "Like you've been attacking it for 20 years with your comments about reality show winners and manufactured careers. You started this, Shania, I'm just finishing it." Shania stared at Kelly for a long moment, her chest rising and falling with controlled breathing. The entire studio was holding its collective breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "You want to know what I really think?" Shania said finally, her voice low but carrying clearly through the microphones. "I think you've spent your entire career trying to prove that you belong in country music, and you're still insecure about how you got there. That's why this conversation bothers you so much. That's why you can't let it go." Kelly's face went pale, but she didn't back down. "And I think you've spent your entire career trying to convince people that your success was legitimate, when deep down you know that without Mutlanja, you would still be playing small venues in Canada." The words hung in the air between them, like a weapon that couldn't be taken back. Both women stared at each other, and everyone in the studio could feel that something irreversible had just happened. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Both women stood frozen in place, the weight of what had just been said settling over the studio like a heavy blanket. The audience was completely motionless, afraid that even the slightest movement might break the spell of this unprecedented moment. Shania was the first to move. She took a slow, deliberate step backward, her eyes never leaving Kelly's face. "You know what, Kelly? I came here today thinking we could have a mature conversation about our careers, about music, about the industry we both love. Instead, you decided to ambush me with 20-year-old grievances and then attack my personal life when I defended myself." Kelly's arms were still crossed, her stance defiant despite the obvious emotional toll the confrontation was taking on both of them. "I didn't ambush you with anything. I tried to address something that has been hanging between us for 2 decades, and you turned it into a personal attack on my legitimacy as an artist." "Your legitimacy as an artist was never in question," Shania replied, though her voice carried a weariness that hadn't been there before. "Your path to becoming an artist was what I questioned. There's a difference, though I'm not sure you're capable of understanding that distinction." "Oh, I understand it perfectly," Kelly said, her voice rising again. "I understand that you felt threatened by the changing landscape of the music industry, and instead of adapting or supporting new artists, you chose to tear them down publicly to make yourself feel better about your own insecurities." Shania shook her head slowly. "You think this was about feeling threatened, Kelly? I had already achieved everything I wanted to achieve in country music by the time you won American Idol. I wasn't worried about competition from you or anyone else." "Then why?" Kelly demanded, taking a step forward. "Why did you feel the need to make those comments? Why did you go out of your way to delegitimize reality show winners if it wasn't because you felt threatened by the attention we were getting?" Shania paused, and for a moment it seemed like she might actually give Kelly the honest answers she was looking for. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. "Because I believed then, and I still believe now, that there's value in the traditional path. There's something to be said for artists who spent years honing their craft, playing small venues, writing songs that nobody heard, struggling to make ends meet while chasing their dreams. And you don't think I struggled?" Kelly's voice cracked slightly. "You don't think that growing up in poverty, working multiple jobs just to survive, having to overcome rejection after rejection before I even got to American Idol, you don't think that counts as paying my dues? I think your struggles were real," Shania said carefully. "But I also think that winning a television show gave you opportunities that other artists spend decades trying to earn. That's not your fault, but it's also not the same thing as the traditional Nashville journey." Kelly stared at her for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter but somehow more powerful. "You know what, Shania, you're right, it's not the same thing. My journey was different. But different doesn't mean less valid, and it certainly doesn't mean less authentic. The fact that you can't see that, even after all these years, even after everything I've accomplished in my career, that says a lot more about you than it does about me." Shania's expression hardened again. "And the fact that you invited me on your show just to relitigate a 20-year-old interview says a lot about you too." "I invited you on my show to clear the air," Kelly replied. "I thought maybe we could put this behind us. Maybe we could find some common ground. Instead, I learned that you still think I don't deserve to be taken seriously as a country artist. And apparently you think my entire career is built on sleeping with the right people. I never said that, Shania protested. You didn't have to say it directly, Kelly shot back. Just like you didn't have to mention me by name in that Country Weekly interview. We both know what you meant. Shania looked around the studio, taking in the shocked faces of the audience members, the frantic expressions of the production crew, the cameras that were still rolling and capturing every moment of this career-defining confrontation. This was a mistake, she said finally, reaching down to grab her purse from beside her chair. I should never have agreed to do this interview. Running away again, Kelly called out as Shania moved toward the edge of the stage. Shania stopped and turned back one final time. I'm not running away, Kelly. I'm choosing to end this conversation before we both say things that we'll regret even more than what we've already said. I don't regret anything I've said today, Kelly replied firmly. For the first time in 20 years, we've been completely honest with each other. I think that's worth something, is it? Shania asked, because from where I'm standing, it looks like we've just destroyed any possibility of mutual respect or professional courtesy. Was that really worth it? Kelly considered the question for a moment before answering. Yes, I think it was, because now everyone knows exactly where we stand with each other. No more pretending, no more fake politeness, no more dancing around the elephant in the room. We've both said what we really think, and now we can move forward with that honesty. Shania shook her head one final time. Good luck with that approach, Kelly. I hope it works out better for you than it has today. With that, Shania Twain turned and walked off the stage, leaving Kelly Clarkson standing alone in front of a stunned audience. The cameras continued to roll as Kelly watched her go, her expression cycling through anger, hurt, and finally something that might have been relief. After Shania disappeared from view, Kelly turned back to face the audience and the cameras. She took a deep breath, composed herself, and managed a smile that was equal parts exhausted and determined. Well, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent studio. That certainly wasn't what I had planned for today's show. The audience remained silent, still processing what they had just witnessed. Kelly walked back to her chair and sat down, looking directly into the camera. I want to thank everyone for watching today, and I want to thank those of you who will continue to support both Shania and me as artists, even after what just happened here. She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. Sometimes the most important conversations are the most difficult ones, and sometimes the truth isn't comfortable for anyone involved. But I believe that honesty, even when it's painful, is better than pretending that problems don't exist. Kelly looked out at her audience, many of whom were still sitting in shocked silence. So thank you for being here for one of the most intense interviews of my career. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what you think about everything that just happened here today. Do you think Shania and I will ever be able to find common ground after this? The credits began to roll as Kelly remained in her chair, the weight of the confrontation still visible on her face. But her head held high as the cameras finally stopped recording.